Over the last 4 years, we have witnessed horrific scenes that our young men and women are facing as they fight for us in combat. They're not always equipped with the best vehicles or the best equipment or even the body armor they need. And now we're finding out that our wounded soldiers are not always receiving the best medical care they deserve when they return home. You know, we've all been following with great distress the story about Walter Reed's outpatient facility and news reports of other hospitals and facilities where soldiers are struggling to receive appropriate care. When I visited Walter Reed again recently to meet with soldiers from New York, I found their tales of being caught up in the bureaucratic nightmares that surround them simply heartbreaking. One soldier I visited with, a major from New York, has been at Walter Reed for more than 2 years, in part because after he was injured, he did not want to be removed from the battlefield and from the troops he commanded. So he stayed longer than he should have, and by the time he was finally evacuated, his condition had deteriorated. Because of inattention and ill treatment at Walter Reed, he had to seek care at Bethesda Naval Medical Center. Not an easy decision for a soldier to make. He appealed his diagnosis and was finally given the surgery he required. Yet now he faces another battle with the Medical Evaluation Board to determine his level of disability. His case officer canceled the first 4 appointments because of overwork and being overly burdened. The major asked for legal assistance, but his requests have gone unanswered. I want to make it absolutely clear that in my experience and based on what I'm hearing from our young men and women in uniform, the doctors and nurses and the staff that actually take care of our wounded heroes, when it comes to the acute care, the surgeries, and all that they need, they're performing admirably. But the system is failing. People are falling into a trap laid by a broken bureaucracy, a strained military, and presidential leadership that's missing in action. You know, it turns out there were only 3 lawyers and 1 paralegal assigned to Walter Reed's entire evaluation process. Compare that to the 4,000 Army JAG lawyers assigned to active duty, the National Guard, and the reserves. A perfect, if heart-rending example of what the real priorities for this administration are. I'm here to say that the buck does stop with this president, and if he doesn't take responsibility, I can assure you that the next president will. Because our soldiers, our Marines, all of our young men and women in uniform, they don't have the luxury of passing the buck to somebody else. They step forward and they step up, and they do the best they can, often under incredibly difficult and dangerous circumstances. This administration is frankly unable to run a 2-car parade. So it's not surprising that we're seeing the results of their indifference, inattention, and incompetence. When did we stop seeing every young man and woman who wears the uniform as our son and our daughter? Because we would certainly stand up for and stand against this kind of treatment for our own children. So today I'm proposing a series of steps to remedy some of these problems that have come to our attention. We should enact a new GI Bill of Rights and a series of reforms aimed at keeping our promise to those who serve our nation. But we've got to do more, and we've got to make sure that we are reordering our priorities from wasting billions of dollars in overpayments to contractors overseas that cannot be accounted for, and instead spending what it takes to give the benefits that truly are needed by our soldiers, our veterans, and their families. I believe if you serve your country should serve you. And that means we send that promise out to those who we ask to enlist, those who we ask to fight, those who we ask to do their best no matter what the orders they receive might be. I'm also proposing new efforts to fix the disability benefits system to help returning service members adapt to civilian life, especially while recovering from their wounds and their psychological challenges, traumatic brain injuries, and post-traumatic stress disorder. I also want to help the children of single parents who have lost their mom or their dad in service to our country. In response to the reports of the disgraceful conditions and treatment that I and others have been receiving, I've asked the Army Inspector General to investigate what senior Army officials knew about the conditions and treatment of patients at Walter Reed and when they knew it. It's important we hold people up the chain of command accountable, and we haven't done enough of that in the wars that we have been fighting since 2001. You know, during my parents' generation, the original beneficiaries of the GI Bill, signed into law by President Franklin Roosevelt, They believed in the basic bargain in our country that, you know, your country would take care of you, that if you gave to your country, you'd get something back. They understood if that basic bargain wasn't honored for our soldiers and our veterans, you couldn't count on it being honored for anybody. And that bargain helped a generation return from war to build families and businesses, highways and schools, expand higher education, forge the great middle class, and unleash the creative and hardworking spirit of America. That's what we have to do again. Thanks for listening and for joining the conversation.